God has promised a great plan for you. He has predestined you to live in victory. And when things happen that you don't understand, things that don't make sense, don't get stuck there. God has some more ingredients coming your way. You may feel like your life is kind of flat today, flat in your finances, flat in your career, flat in your marriage. But all God has to do is add some of His baking soda. That'll cause you to rise to a new level. You've probably seen that chef on television, Chef Emerald. When he adds an ingredient, he always says, bam. Just imagine God puts a little bit of favor, bam. A healing, bam. A good break, bam. Some of you are lonely. All God has to do is bam, a divine connection. Maybe you're at odds with a child, bam, supernatural restoration. I don't know about you, but I'm expecting some bams in my life. I'm expecting God to add the right ingredients. That means the right people, the right opportunities, the right breaks at just the right time. And you may have had some disappointments. Life may not have treated you fair, but you wouldn't be alive if God didn't have another victory in your future. That setback was not the end. That breakup you went through years ago, it may not have made sense, but there's another piece coming that's going to pull it all together. Don't be impatient. It's not over until God says it's over. And the fact is, we all have things that if we isolate them, we don't understand. But if you will just keep pressing forward, one day you will look back and see how it all played into a master plan that God had designed for your life. But the problem is when we isolate these negative experiences and we wonder why something has happened to us, it causes us to get bitter. And I know people right now that are mad at God. They're soured on life, no joy, no enthusiasm. It's because they went through a disappointment, went through something unfair, and instead of believing that God was still in control, believing that it was going to lead to a new beginning, they isolate that incident and they think, well, why did God let this happen to me? But everything is not going to make sense on its own. We have to have a deep inner trust, a confidence down in here that says, I know God has a great plan for my life. I know He is directing my steps, and even though I may not understand this, I know it's not a surprise to God, and somehow, some way, He's going to work it out to my advantage. Imagine one day we decided we don't have time to make the chocolate chip cookies. Let's just get the ingredients out and eat them separately. Jonathan, go ahead, you start. Here's a cup of brown sugar. Here's a teaspoon of vanilla to wash it down with. Here's a raw egg. Here's your 2 cups of flour. Now, Jonathan, you officially have chocolate chip cookies on the inside. Somehow, it's just not the same. The key is it all works together. It's got to be just the right mix put in just at the right time if it's really going to taste good. And in the same way, you can't isolate one part of your life and think, oh, this doesn't taste good. My life is sour, Joel. I went through a divorce. Or I lost a loved one that was so close to me. I started a business that didn't make it. I've been through so much. No, that's just one ingredient. It's not supposed to taste good by itself. It's got to be mixed together. And when you go through disappointments, when you're in slow seasons, don't get discouraged. All your ingredients are not in yet. Remember, a little bit of baking soda can make a huge difference. That means just a little break, just meeting one new person, just getting one new idea, just one touch of God's favor can turn the sour into sweet, the sorrow into joy, the mourning into dancing. I read about a young man. He wasn't wanted by his parents. He was given up for adoption at 6 weeks of age. And when he turned 2, he developed a mysterious illness that kept him from growing properly. First, they thought it was something like cystic fibrosis. They ruled that out. For 6 years, he was in and out of the hospitals trying to find what was wrong. Eventually, he got a little better and started growing, but he was still very small. His dream in school was to play sports, baseball, basketball, football, but he was way too small. To make matters worse, some of the kids bullied him, made fun of him, called him names. Didn't look like God had a plan. Didn't seem to make sense. But remember, it's not over until God says it's over. All he needed was a few more ingredients. Being left by his parents, being rejected, that isolated on its own is very distasteful. Spending years in and out of the hospital, that alone can be very discouraging. But that's not the end of the process. When God begins to add some of His ingredients, when He mixes in a spoonful of His favor and a cup of His goodness, and He sprinkles a few of His supernatural breaks, then all of a sudden, what was very distasteful by itself, mixed together with the right ingredients, becomes very tasteful. And even though he couldn't play those kind of sports, he knew that wasn't the end of his story. He knew God didn't make any mistakes. He started going to ice skating lessons with his sister. It wasn't long before the coach noticed he was an extremely gifted skater. Long story short, he started training for the Olympics. All the experts told him he was too small. You don't have a chance. You're just wasting your time. But listen, you are not who people say you are. You are who God says you are. Scott Hamilton went on to win every national and international skating championship for 4 straight years, including the 1984 Olympic gold medal. And in the natural, you may not see how you could accomplish your goals. You don't see how you could fulfill what God's put in your heart. But know today, all of your ingredients are not in. When we're making those cookies, our favorite thing is to put the chocolate chips in. That's what gives them the flavor and makes them look so tasty. Some of you today, you haven't had your chocolate chips put in yet. Why are you soured on life? You don't know what God has in your future. Get your joy back, your vision back. Quit dwelling on all your disappointments and why you went through what you went through. No, shake that off and have the attitude, I've had my flour put in. I've been through the mixing process. Now I know I'm close to those chocolate chips. I know just a few more ingredients and God's going to bring it all together and cause it to work out for my good. One time when Moses was leading the people of Israel, they had been traveling through the wilderness day after day without any water. They were so thirsty, they didn't know if they could make it. And they finally came to this river. They were so excited. Their dream had come true. They rushed over there to drink it, but when they tasted the water, it was bitter. They couldn't drink it. It was too sour. Have you ever come to a place in life where you thought it would be your dream come true? You thought you would have finally accomplished a goal, but all of a sudden something didn't work out. You spent years building a business, maybe even working there. You're ready to retire, only to find that it's not going to happen. It's not going to last. I talked to a young lady. She was so excited about having a baby. It was her first child, and she and her husband were getting the nursery all ready, everything prepared. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to carry the child full term. She had a miscarriage. Those waters were bitter. In 1981, our family was looking forward to having a big Christmas together. It was going to be a fun time of family and friends. But on December the 11th, we got the news that my mother had terminal cancer and given just a few weeks to live. What we thought would be a season of celebration ended up being a very bitter season. That's what happened to these people. There was no water to drink. They were so thirsty, and they began to complain to Moses. They got so discouraged, they thought it was all over. But no, God still had a plan. And God told Moses to put a certain kind of tree in the water. And when he did, those bitter waters were turned into sweet. Now the people could freely drink as much as they wanted. What is God saying? When life turns out bitter, when things seem unfair, I'm not at a loss. I still have an ingredient that I can put in that can turn your bitter waters into sweet. You may not understand why you went through what you went through, but don't try to figure it all out. Faith is all about trusting God when you don't understand things. And some people get so caught up on why God didn't answer their prayers. Things like, God, you could have healed my loved one. God, you could have restored my marriage. God, you could have kept me from getting laid off. Listen, here's what I've learned. Don't ever put a question mark where God has put a period. When something is over and done, let it go and move on to the next chapter in your life. It may be bitter, but God has another ingredient. There's something in your future that's going to turn the sour into sweet. I know a gentleman that worked for many years for a major newspaper. He was getting close to retiring, but at the last minute, they had to let him go. Those waters were bitter. He understood this principle. He didn't get soured on life and go around complaining. He stayed in faith, believing that God would open up another door. His dream was always to write books. And he had done a few here and there on the side while he was working as a reporter. But he never had the courage to really step out and do it full time. But not long after he was laid off, he got a call from a publishing agent asking if he was available to work on a major book with a well-known author. He took that opportunity, and today he's living his dream. He's doing what he always wanted to do. He told how if he had not been laid off, he wouldn't have been available. That agent would have never called him. What am I saying? God has another ingredient. When one door closes, God's going to open up another door. If you will stay in faith, it'll be a bigger and a better door. And I've found sometimes, like this gentleman, if we don't have the courage to take a step of faith, God will give us a push to get us out of our comfort zone. Those bitter waters may be a blessing in disguise. No, it's not good that you lost your job, but it could be good if it causes you to stretch to the next level, or if it causes you to go back to school, go back to college. It's not good that you get a bad report about your health, but it can be good if it causes you to get back in shape. It wasn't good when my father went to be with the Lord. We prayed, we believed, the waters were bitter. But really, it was those bitter waters that forced me out of my comfort zone. That's when I really stepped into my divine destiny. And the symbol for the word crisis in Chinese is made up of two words, danger and opportunity. And in every crisis, in every loss, in every disappointment, there's both danger to get bitter, to stay sour, to settle where we are, and there's opportunity. We can grow. We can step out in faith. We can stretch to the new things that God has in store. I've talked to a lot of people that went through Hurricane Katrina. They lost everything. And I told them, you can accept the hand that you've been dealt, seeing this as an opportunity to meet new friends, to live in a new city, to have a new job, or you can fight it. You can resist it, get bitter, live with a chip on your shoulder. The choice is up to you. There's both danger and opportunity in every crisis. There's a couple that's here every weekend, fine people, faithful people. They lost their teenage daughter to cancer. We prayed and believed with them for many, many years. And she made it a lot longer than she was supposed to. But one day she went home to be with the Lord. As you can imagine, that was some bitter waters. They didn't understand it. Even though it was difficult, they committed it into God's hands. Today, that couple is a shining example of how God can turn the sour into sweet. Every time I see them, they radiate God's goodness. Whenever I meet someone that's lost a young person, they're the first people I think of. I always ask them to call. They went through a major crisis. I can't think of anything bigger. They faced danger. They could easily be negative, bitter, angry people, blaming God. Why did this happen? But no, in that crisis, they saw the opportunity. They saw a chance to receive God's grace. And today, they're helping others to make it through. God wants to show His grace through you. When you go through a crisis, and instead of getting bitter, you believe that God is still in control. You stay hopeful and believe that He's going to open up a new door. Then you too will become a face of grace. You will not only see God's goodness in a greater way, but you will inspire others